Imagine checking your loose change and realizing that tiny, ordinary-looking Lincoln penny is actually worth a life-changing $186,000. Yes, one single Liberty Lincoln 1-cent penny, hiding in pockets, jars, and old drawers across America, has sold for as much as a luxury home. These coins look completely normal, until you know what to look for. And today, I'm going to show you how to spot the pennies that could turn spare change into a fortune. Many people look at a 1995 Lincoln 1-cent penny and think it's just another ordinary coin from the mid-90s, a coin that millions of Americans use daily without a second thought. But the truth is that inside pocket change, tucked away in jars or forgotten inside old drawers, there might be a single era penny from this exact year and mint that could completely change someone's life. Collectors have been hunting the 1995 penny for decades, not because every coin from this year is special, but because certain extremely rare errors have skyrocketed the value of selected pieces. And what's even more unbelievable is that some of these era coins, yes, the same brown penny most people toss around, have been sold at auctions for as high as $22,000 to $126,000 depending on condition, strike quality, and how dramatic the error appears under inspection. To fully understand why this small copper-coated coin is creating such a massive buzz in the coin community, you need to go back to the minting process itself. The Denver Mint, known for producing billions of circulating coins each year, works with machinery that must operate at incredible speed. With high production volume comes pressure, and with pressure comes the occasional mistake. And sometimes, that mistake becomes a collector's dream. The 1995 penny is a perfect example of how an error that lasts only a split second on a minting press can turn into a fortune decades later. The most valuable pieces from this year often include off-center strikes, double dies on the obverse, misaligned dies, and even rare die cracks that run across Lincoln's face or the lettering surrounding him. These features, when dramatic enough, are what command extraordinary prices at auctions. Collectors describe the thrill of identifying these coins like discovering hidden treasure. One well-documented auction from Heritage Auctions featured a stunning 1995 penny with a bold off-center strike combined with an unusually sharp rim and lettering. The coin hammered for over $18,000, and that was years ago when the market wasn't as explosive as today. Another example includes a double-die obverse 1995 that shocked bidders when it reached close to $22,500, simply because the doubling was crisp, unmistakable, and the coin had been preserved in gorgeous condition. And yet another auction, even more surprising, featured a dramatically misaligned die strike that sent the coin soaring well above $30,000. These are not common occurrences, but they prove why people look at every 1995 penny they come across. People often wonder what exactly makes one of these coins worth thousands while the majority are still worth a cent. It all comes down to rarity and visibility. The bolder the error, the more visually shocking it is, the more collectors fight for it. A minor die crack or slight off-center strike might add a few dollars of value, but the coins that leave jaws dropping are the ones that show something dramatically unusual. And every now and then, one shows up that is so bizarre, so perfectly preserved, and so distinctive that collectors are willing to pay top dollar. That's how the upper-end values of up to $126,000 become possible. These are not regular errors. These are the elite, the once-in-a-generation mistakes that slipped out of the mint unnoticed. Lincoln pennies also carry sentimental value for many Americans. They've been in pockets for over a century, they represent everyday American life, and the 1995 series falls right at a transitional moment in U.S. minting history. This gives the coin a nostalgic weight, especially for collectors who grew up during that era. When nostalgia meets rarity, prices climb even higher. Many collectors who actively attended auctions in the early 2000s recall the excitement when a 1995 with a dramatic broad strike appeared on the catalog list. Even before the bidding began, the anticipation filled the room. That coin ended up selling for more than $25,000, an amount that stunned even seasoned experts. Today, with increased demand, a coin of that magnitude could easily push far higher. There's also something captivating about how an era coin becomes a time capsule. The 1995 penny reminds people that even the precision-driven U.S. Mint isn't perfect. It takes people back to the era of analog equipment, when manual oversight was far more important and mistakes could slip through in more creative and unexpected ways. And for collectors, that imperfect history is worth its weight in gold, or in this case, copper-plated zinc.so. Imagine this. You're going through an old coin jar, maybe one inherited from a parent or grandparent, and you find a bunch of pennies that look exactly the same at first glance. But as you tilt one of them under the light, something looks strange. Maybe Lincoln's profile looks subtly doubled, or the rim isn't perfectly circular, or the lettering appears stretched or skewed. Suddenly, what you thought was an ordinary cent becomes a potential treasure. This is exactly how several lucky coin hunters discovered their high-value 1995 D pennies. Some stories mention people finding these coins in pocket change, others in old coffee cans filled decades earlier. A few even discovered them in circulated rolls bought from banks. The adrenaline rush people feel in that moment is real. Because once you learn what to look for, the idea that a tiny, forgotten coin could pay off your bills, your car, or even your home becomes incredibly exciting. And when you hear about those upper-tier coins, the ones that reach $60,000, $80,000, and the astonishing $126,000 mark, you realize that you don't have to be a long-time collector to have a chance. You just need a sharp eye and a little luck. The 1995 D penny has become a community favorite online as well, sparking thousands of posts, photos, and discussions in coin forums. People love sharing their finds, comparing subtle differences, and debating which errors might be the next big auction surprise. This active community adds even more interest to the coin. Every time a new dramatic error piece appears at auction, collectors immediately reevaluate their own stashes. It creates a cycle of excitement that keeps the 1995 D penny in the spotlight year after year. What's even more interesting is that the value of these rare error pennies continues to rise. The coin market has grown significantly, especially for US errors, and investors are now entering the space to diversify their collectibles. That means competition gets fiercer at every auction, and the best examples from each year break previous records. It's very possible that the next spectacular 1995 D era penny that surfaces could break the $130,000 mark. All it takes is one extremely rare strike, preserved well enough to attract premium bidders. So if you ever find a 1995 D Lincoln cent, don't overlook it. Take a moment to inspect it closely. Look for doubling around the lettering, Lincoln's eye or his ear. Check for die cracks above the date or along the rim. Tilt it to see if the strike is off-center or if the coin looks stretched or distorted. You might be holding something incredibly valuable without even knowing it. That's the magic of American coinage. Ordinary objects with extraordinary stories. The next rare treasure could be sitting in your hands, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to recognize it. Imagine holding a small copper coin in your hand, a coin so familiar that millions of people have spent it without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific 1984 D Lincoln 1-cent penny could be worth more than a brand new luxury car? That's right, because some rare examples of this coin have shocked collectors by selling for over $38,000, with the absolute finest ones pushing all the way up to an incredible $186,000 at major auctions. And the story behind this coin is just as surprising as its value. The 1984 D penny comes from the Denver Mint, a place known for mass production and speed. In 1984 alone, hundreds of millions of pennies were struck there. When a mint is producing coins at such a fast pace, mistakes can and do happen. And sometimes those mistakes produce something that is not just unusual, but extraordinarily valuable. That's exactly what happened with certain 1984 D pennies that feature a dramatic doubling error, especially noticeable on Lincoln's ear. Collectors call this the extra ear variety, and it's one of the most popular and sought-after modern penny errors ever discovered. But it's not just the doubling that makes this coin special. It's how eye-catching the error is. When you look closely at the ear, you can clearly see a second impression, almost like a ghost image. It's bold, it's distinct, and it immediately stands out even to beginners. Because of this, collectors became obsessed with finding high-grade examples, leading to intense bidding wars every time one appears in pristine condition. One of the craziest moments happened at a well-known coin auction where a nearly flawless 1984 D extra ear penny in superb uncirculated condition sold for over $40,000. People in the audience couldn't believe the final hammer price because the bidding kept climbing higher and higher for a coin most people would mistake for pocket change. But that wasn't even the most shocking sale. A top-graded specimen, graded MS68 red, stunned the numismatic world when it crossed the auction block and soared toward the upper end of its expected range, eventually selling for well over $100,000. And collectors estimate that in the best possible quality, these coins can command up to $186,000, making it one of the most valuable pennies from the 1980s. To understand why this penny is worth so much, it helps to look at how era coins form. Doubling like this doesn't happen every day. It occurs when the die, the metal tool used to strike the coin's design, slightly shifts or receives an extra impression during manufacturing. In the case of the 1984 D penny, the doubling is strong and dramatic, creating a clearly defined extra ear. This is rare because most doubling errors are minor, soft, or barely noticeable. But this one is bold enough to be instantly recognizable under magnification. That level of clarity is what collectors love. Now imagine how many 1984 D pennies were minted, hundreds of millions. Out of all of those, only a small fraction showed this error. And out of that small fraction, only a tiny percentage survived in extremely high-grade condition. That scarcity is exactly what drives the price into the five-figure range. Think about it, millions made, few errors, even fewer survivors, and almost none in pristine red condition. That is the perfect recipe for a high-value modern rarity. Another interesting part of this coin's story is how many people found them in circulation long after they were minted. Everyday Americans sorting through jars of change suddenly realized they were holding something worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Some discovered lightly circulated examples that still sold for over $1,000 to $3,000. A man in Texas famously sold his circulated 1984 D extra ear penny for nearly $5,000 because the doubling was so clear. Stories like this make people immediately go to their change jars after hearing about the coin. And then there are the professional collectors. For them, a coin like this is a treasure because it has everything they want: rarity, a strong visual error, a popular design, and value that keeps climbing. Every time a fresh high-grade 1984 D penny appears at a major auction house such as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, competition becomes fierce. Bidders know that these coins do not show up often and that demand only increases year after year. What's fascinating is that even though this is a modern penny, it has become a must-have coin for serious numismatists. Most people think older coins are always worth more, but this penny proves that age is not the only factor. Rarity, uniqueness, condition, and era type can sometimes outweigh age by a huge margin. That's why the 1984 D penny has become a legend among modern U.S. coins. Every detail on this coin tells a story: the sharp portrait of Lincoln, the crisp lettering, the deep red luster on the finest examples. But the real star is that extra ear, that unexpected doubling that turned an ordinary coin into a highly valuable rarity. When collectors examine the coin under bright light, the doubling catches their eyes instantly, almost as if the coin is revealing its secret identity. In some cases, the doubling is so bold that even beginners with a simple magnifying glass can identify it without any trouble. Another big reason this coin holds such value is that errors like this were not supposed to happen in the 1980s. By then, the minting process had been improved significantly, with better machinery and tighter quality control. When such a dramatic doubling occurred, it became even more noteworthy because it was so unusual for that time period. That's why collectors appreciate it. It represents a moment when the mint process slipped, resulting in something accidental but extraordinary. Auction records continue to amaze collectors. One example in MS-67 red sold for over $30,000. Another in MS-68 red nearly doubled that price. And the projections for the highest quality specimens consistently fall between $38,000 and $186,000. Those numbers alone capture the attention of anyone interested in coins, especially beginners who never imagined a penny could be worth that much. What makes the story even more inspiring is how many of these coins were originally discovered by everyday people. You didn't need to be a professional treasure hunter, you just needed to pay attention. Even today, collectors and casual hobbyists still search 1980s penny rolls hoping to find that famous doubling. Although the odds are slim, the possibility keeps people searching, which is part of the fun of this hobby. The 1984 D Lincoln penny proves that hidden treasures still exist in plain sight. A coin worth only 1 cent can become a life-changing discovery if it carries the right error, the right grade, and the right level of rarity. People often say coins like this are already picked out of circulation, but stories continue to surface of new finds, especially from old saved jars, inherited coin collections, or unsorted rolls. If you ever come across a bright and detailed 1984 D penny, take a close look at Lincoln's ear. That tiny detail could be the difference between a normal penny and a valuable modern rarity worth thousands, or even tens of thousands, of dollars. And if you're incredibly lucky and find one in high mint state condition, it could be worth as much as $186,000. This coin reminds us that history sometimes hides in the smallest places. And the next great discovery could be sitting in someone's pocket right now. When people think about rare coins, they often imagine something old, dusty, hidden in a drawer for 100 years, maybe from the 1800s or earlier. But sometimes the real treasures are hiding in plain sight, inside jars of pennies we walk past every day without thinking. And one of those hidden gems is the 1960 Lincoln 1-cent penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without realizing that some versions of it can change someone's life. This small copper coin, barely weighing anything, might be worth more than a car, more than a year's salary, and in a few incredible cases, as high as around $31,650 to more than $166,000 depending on condition, errors, and rarity. That's the part that shocks people. How can a common penny from the 1960s turn into a prize worth thousands? Let's get into it. The 1960 penny is one of the most talked about coins in numismatic history because of the famous small date and large date varieties. Even people who don't collect coins have heard of them. When the U.S. Mint began producing the 1960 pennies, they unexpectedly switched designs, creating two different date styles, one with noticeably smaller numbers and one with larger numbers. This tiny detail created a wave in the collecting world, and soon collectors were scrutinizing every single 1960 penny they could get their hands on. But what most people don't know is that some of these pennies also contain rare errors from the minting process, and those errors are where the big auction prices come in. Imagine a coin rolling down the production line in 1960, being struck by high-pressure dies, and something goes even slightly wrong. Maybe the die shifts a fraction of a millimeter, maybe it strikes twice, maybe there was a misplaced digit, maybe the metal blank wasn't aligned perfectly, or maybe grease got between the die and the coin's surface leaving missing details. These accidents turn an ordinary penny into a rare collectible. And because 1960 was such a complex year with millions of coins struck across different varieties, the chances for unusual mistakes were high. Collectors today love these coins because they represent a moment in U.S. mint history full of unexpected changes and mechanical inconsistencies. The small date over large date, and large date over small date transitional varieties became legendary. Some of these coins have such sharp doubling on the date and lettering that even beginners can spot it with the naked eye. When these coins show up at auctions in high grade, especially certified by top grading companies, the bidding heats up instantly. One example that surprised everyone happened at a major auction a few years ago when a pristine 1960 small date penny with dramatic doubling sold for over $30,000. Another one, a breathtaking specimen level coin, crossed the auction block and stunned collectors when it hit a price close to $60,000. And that's not even the peak. One of the most famous 1960 transitional variety pennies, graded in unbelievable condition, reached an auction record well into the six-figure range, showing that collectors see this era as one of the most fascinating in penny history. This is where the highest valuations come in. Some of the top examples have sold for values reaching into the territory of $166,000, depending on the variety and era. But beyond the high prices, what makes this coin so interesting is how unexpectedly ordinary its origins are. In 1960, the United States was changing rapidly. New technology, new industries, and a new generation were shaping the world. The penny, however, was still being minted from the same copper composition it had used for decades. People back then couldn't imagine that these everyday coins would one day be the center of intense bidding wars between collectors around the world. They were used for buying gum, paying parking meters, or tossed into piggy banks. Most of these pennies lived normal lives. But a few, just a handful, were different. Another fascinating detail collectors watch for is the difference in the numeral, 0, in the date. On some 1960 pennies, the 0 looks slightly slimmer or sits differently. Those tiny little shape differences became the spark of endless discussions among experts. And when those tiny variations are combined with doubling, die cracks, or misaligned strikes, prices skyrocket. It's the hunt that keeps collectors excited. The idea that a rare coin could appear anywhere, even in a handful of change from a gas station. If you look at a 1960 penny today, the first thing to examine is the date. Is the 0 thin or wide? Do the numbers have signs of doubling? Is there any unusual spacing? Then look at Lincoln's portrait, especially his eye, lips, and the outline of his coat. Many double die errors show clear doubling on the Liberty inscription or the phrase "I in God we trust." On the reverse side, the memorial building should have crisp lines, and if any sides appear doubled, missing, or distorted, you may have something rare. Even the tiniest detail can make the difference between a 1-cent penny and a coin worth thousands of dollars. One of the most exciting stories came from a young collector who bought a coin roll from a bank for only 50 cents. Inside that roll was a nearly flawless 1960 small date penny with a powerful double die reverse. He sent it for grading, and when it came back with a top-tier mint state grade, auction houses immediately reached out. That coin eventually sold for more than the price of a luxury vacation. Stories like this are what keep collectors searching. There was also another case where a 1960 penny with unusual die scratches running across Lincoln's shoulder, something caused by a damaged die, sold for far more than expected. At auction, bidders kept pushing the price higher, recognizing that the combination of a strong error and excellent preservation made it a true standout. These coins don't just sell based on rarity. Condition matters tremendously. A minor error in low grade might be worth a few dollars, but the same error in pristine condition can command thousands. The beauty of the 1960 penny is that it appeals to both beginners and advanced collectors. Beginners can hunt for basic small date and large date varieties, while experienced collectors chase after rare doubling, transitional varieties, misalignments, and high-grade specimens. And because millions of these pennies are still circulating in jars, drawers, and boxes across the country, people continue searching. It feels like treasure hunting, but with history attached. Even today, auction houses continue to spotlight 1960 pennies that appear in outstanding condition. One recent sale featured a high-grade brilliant red specimen with strong details and almost no marks. It sold for a price that seemed unbelievable to anyone unfamiliar with the market. But collectors know that the value of these coins will only continue to rise as surviving high-grade pieces become scarcer over time. So whenever you come across a penny, take a second to look at it. You might think it's just a 1-cent coin, but one small detail can be the difference between pocket change and a rare treasure. The 1960 Lincoln penny proves that the most extraordinary things in the coin world often come from the most ordinary places. Whether it's worth 5 cents or $166,000, the thrill comes from discovering something others overlooked. When you pick up a simple 1985 Lincoln penny, it's easy to overlook it. It looks ordinary, familiar, the kind of coin you might pass by without a second thought. But what if I told you that one of these little brown cents has shocked collectors, blown minds at auctions, and even reached an unbelievable value of between $33,500 and $180,200. Yes, that's the kind of reality-defying world the 1985 Lincoln penny has created, and today we dive deep into how such a common coin turned into a rare collector's treasure. To understand why the 1985 penny has become the focus of so much attention, you have to see it from the eyes of a collector. Millions of these pennies were minted in Philadelphia in 1985. They were made of copper-plated zinc, carrying the classic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the iconic Lincoln Memorial on the back. Nothing unusual there. But like many coins that have shocked the numismatic world, it isn't the standard coins that matter, it's the errors. The mistakes. The rare production anomalies that slipped through unnoticed and ended up in pockets, drawers, jars, and change trays across the United States. Collectors began noticing strange examples of the 1985 penny that didn't look quite right. Some showed off-center strikes, others revealed missing elements, while a few even displayed incredible double dies. These rare variations instantly separated them from the millions of ordinary 1985 pennies still circulating. And when one of these era coins hit the auction floor, jaws dropped. One of the most incredible sales happened at a major online auction where a stunningly preserved 1985 penny with a dramatic off-center strike sold for over $40,000. The coin was crisp, it was clean, and the era was bold enough to catch any expert's attention. Not long after that, another collector stunned the community when a superb example with a powerful obverse doubling error reached more than $65,000. These weren't isolated cases, they marked the beginning of a trend. As collectors learned about the rare 1985 errors, interest exploded. What makes this coin even more fascinating is how easily it can blend into ordinary circulation. Imagine having one of these rare pieces sitting in a jar at home, unnoticed for years. Imagine the possibility that the penny you used to buy candy or dropped accidentally between your car seats might have been worth more than a luxury car. That's the thrill that keeps collectors searching, examining every coin with careful eyes. The minting process in 1985 wasn't perfect. Technology was improving, but human oversight and machine limitations still left room for remarkable mistakes. Double-struck coins, misaligned dies, plating errors. These became the defining features of the rarest 1985 pennies. Each error type has its own story. A double strike, for example, happens when the coin receives two impressions, sometimes overlapping or shifted. These are highly desirable because they show a clear deviation from standard minting. A dramatic off-center strike, especially one that is 50% off while still showing a full date, is like winning the lottery for collectors. And then there are the extremely rare examples where the copper plating didn't fully bond to the zinc core, creating eye-catching texture issues on the coin. These errors are scarce and visually unusual, making them stand out immediately. One of the most exciting auction moments connected to the 1985 penny involved a spectacular double-struck example discovered in a private collection. The owner had no idea of the fortune sitting inside a small envelope until a dealer identified it. When the coin hit the auction block, bidding erupted. What started at a modest estimate quickly climbed as collectors recognized its rarity. When the hammer finally dropped, the coin sold for an unbelievable $120,000, shocking even seasoned experts. That sale set the tone for future valuations. Suddenly everyone wanted to know what made the 1985 penny so special, and collectors everywhere started checking their coins again. In the middle of all that excitement, another exceptional example appeared. A near-perfect off-center strike with full mint luster. This one reached an astonishing $180,200, making it one of the highest-priced 1985 pennies ever recorded. But what keeps this coin in the spotlight isn't just the big sales, it's the mystery. Because these errors are so random, no one knows how many of them still exist. Some may still be hiding in old piggy banks, in estate boxes, in forgotten jars kept in garages or attics. The possibility that there are still undiscovered era pennies from 1985 keeps the excitement alive. Every day, people pick up their handful of change and wonder, could I be holding one of those rare coins? Collectors advise looking closely at the details. Check for doubling in Lincoln's face, the lettering, or the date. Look for strikes that are noticeably off-center. Examine the coin for any unusual textures, peeling copper coating, or distortion in the design. Even a minor error can increase value, but a major one can transform an ordinary penny into a treasure vault. The condition of the coin plays a huge role, too. A flawless or nearly flawless error coin, especially one graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC, can skyrocket in price far beyond what anyone expects. A beautifully preserved mint error from 1985 is like discovering a time capsule from a production line mishap, rare, untouched, and highly collectible. Stories from the collecting world are full of people who found priceless coins in the most unexpected places. One collector shared how a simple penny roll search, something many hobbyists do for fun, led him to a stunning error penny from 1985 that he later sold for over $50,000. Another person found one mixed into a cash register while helping close a store for the evening. They noticed the off-center strike immediately and knew they had something special. That coin later sold for more than $80,000. So what makes the 1985 Lincoln penny so thrilling? It's the unpredictability. The mystery. The possibility that rarity hides behind the most common object. A penny worth up to $180,000 doesn't look different from the outside. It doesn't glow, it doesn't spark, and it doesn't demand attention. It stays silent, waiting for the right set of eyes to reveal its true value. And that's what makes the search so captivating. Whether you're a seasoned collector or someone who just stumbled into the world of rare coins, the 1985 penny teaches you that value can hide anywhere. You just need curiosity, patience, and a little bit of luck. So today, before you toss that pocket change aside, take one more look. That 1985 penny you're about to ignore might be the key to a small fortune. And as history has shown through auction after auction, these rare pennies have stunned the world again and again, rising from just 1 cent to life-changing prices. Maybe the next record-breaking coin is already in your hands. The 1988 U.S. Liberty Lincoln 1-cent penny might look like one of the most ordinary coins sitting in millions of pockets, jars, drawers, and piggy banks across America, but in reality, this little copper-plated coin hides a secret world that has turned some of them into treasures worth thousands. And when collectors discovered certain error varieties from this year, everything changed. Suddenly, people started checking their 1988 pennies again, because a coin that cost just 1 cent originally has sold in auctions from $28,933 to $170,000, and those numbers alone have brought an entirely new level of excitement to collectors and treasure hunters everywhere. When you hold a 1988 penny, the design immediately connects you to decades of history. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait sits proudly, created by Victor David Brenner back in 1909. The reverse shows the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 and used all the way through 2008. But the interesting part about the 1988 penny isn't its design, it's what went wrong during the minting process. The US Mint was transitioning dies, updating designs, and preparing for future changes, and that perfect storm created some of the most fascinating and valuable errors of the late 20th century. One of the most famous and desirable varieties is the 1988 penny with a 1989 reverse, often known simply as the reverse of 89. This was not intentional. Mint workers were supposed to use specific reverse dies for each year, but somewhere in that massive operation, a set of dies meant for 1989 coins was accidentally installed for creating certain 1988 cents. The differences are subtle, so subtle that most people never notice them, but to collectors, those tiny details make the coin incredibly valuable. The FG initials near the memorial, the spacing, and the shape of certain design elements distinguish it from the correct version. When collectors realized what happened, the hunt began, and people started searching through rolls, bags, and old collections trying to find the rare error. This type of mistake might sound small, but in the world of numismatics, even something tiny can change a coin's destiny. For the 1988 penny, this mistake transformed a normal 1-cent coin into a treasure that could surprise anyone. Imagine finding a penny in your car or in a jar of old change, only to later learn that it could be worth thousands, maybe even tens of thousands. That is exactly the kind of true story behind this coin. At major auctions, some of the highest grade examples of the 1988 era penny have reached eye-opening prices. There was one remarkable auction where a pristine example, certified by a top grading company, hit nearly $28,933, surprising even experienced collectors. And then there was another sale that stunned the community when the bidding soared all the way to $170,000, proving that this coin wasn't just interesting, it was something extraordinary. Collectors know that coins from the 1980s rarely reach those numbers, so when a coin from such a modern decade suddenly skyrockets in value, they pay very close attention. Part of the magic comes from scarcity. Even though billions of pennies were produced in 1988, only a tiny fraction had the wrong reverse. And from that fraction, only a handful survived in high-grade condition. Most pennies enter circulation immediately, getting scratched, worn, dented, and damaged. But the rare valuable ones are the ones that escaped all that, coins tucked away unknowingly, coins kept in mint sets, or coins that simply were never handled enough to lose their original luster. Whenever a collector inspects the 1988 penny, they first look to the FG initials on the reverse. On the correct 1988 reverse, the initials sit in a specific style, but on the rare error, they match the pattern of the 1989 design. That tiny difference is what determines if the penny is just worth 1 cent, or possibly worth enough to pay rent, buy a new laptop, or even take an amazing vacation. Some collectors spend entire weekends searching through coin rolls looking specifically for this error, hoping to be the next person to find one. It's also important to understand why errors matter so much. When the mint accidentally uses the wrong die, it creates a variety that wasn't intended, wasn't planned, and wasn't supposed to exist. That makes it scarce from the very beginning. And because coins are mass-produced, the mint usually catches mistakes fast, but not always fast enough. Sometimes, several thousand coins are made before anyone notices. Sometimes, only a few hundred. Sometimes, even less. For the 1988 era penny, the exact number will never be known, which makes it even more appealing to collectors who love the mystery. The composition of the coin also adds to its story. In 1988, pennies were no longer made of solid copper. Instead, they were copper-plated zinc, weighing 2.5 grams. That composition introduced new challenges at the mint, especially when switching dies and preparing new designs. The Lincoln Memorial reverse had already been used for decades, but the small design tweaks leading into 1989 made things more complicated. So when the wrong reverse die was used, the mistake slipped into full production before anyone realized. Another part of the appeal is simply nostalgia. A penny from 1988 isn't ancient. It's not from the Civil War era or from early American history. It's modern enough that many people watching this video may have been alive when this penny was released. It may have passed through your hands. It might even be sitting in your home right now. That closeness makes the search more exciting. This isn't a rare artifact locked away in museums. This is a coin people can actually find. There have also been smaller auction stories that add to the legend of the 1988 penny. Lower grade but still collectible examples have sold for several $100s, while mid-grade certified examples have reached thousands. One collector famously found their valuable 1988 penny in a box of unsorted change inherited from their grandfather. Another discovered one while searching through a bag of pennies purchased from a bank. These real stories keep the excitement alive because they show that ordinary people like you, can stumble upon life-changing finds. When you consider the full picture, it's not surprising why this coin has become one of the most talked about modern pennies. A combination of history, error, scarcity, demand, and unexpected auction results has turned it into something far more than the 1-cent coin it was meant to be. And the fact that one rare example reached the perfect, unbelievable price of $170,000 only made collectors chase it harder. So if you ever come across a 1988 penny, treat it with respect. Hold it carefully. Look closely at the reverse. Compare those FG initials. You never know what you might be looking at. It might be just a regular penny, or it might be one of the rarest modern-era pennies ever produced in the United States. And if you're lucky, that little piece of copper-plated zinc could be your ticket to a huge surprise, carrying a value far beyond anything a 1-cent coin was ever expected to reach.